And my guest today, I've been wanting to talk to for several weeks. Her name is Amanda McKinney, and she's a recognized accountability coach, which is one big reason I wanted to talk to her. She's an author of the Amazon bestseller, Why Not You? An Accidental Entrepreneur's Guide to Success, and host of the top rated podcast, The Unapologetic Entrepreneur. She's an accountability coach, and she helps you navigate barriers and continue to make progress so you can relentlessly pursue your goals. Please welcome Amanda McKinney to the vopro podcast. Amanda, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Paul, for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And like you, I've been anxiously awaiting this day for several weeks as well.
Well, when we met, right, we immediately found out we geek out on the same kind of stuff,
It's so true.
accountability and productivity and all the stuff that makes us good entrepreneurs. So I think I want to start there. You loosely call yourself an accountability coach. Let's start there. What does accountability mean, and what's the benefit for someone that either holds themselves accountable or has someone else hold them accountable?
Oh, it's such a great question. I haven't always called myself an accountability coach.
Okay.
And that's one of those things that's, for any entrepreneur out there, I feel like we all have this like winding road that leads to where we are now, which I think is such a lovely thing. It's also incredibly frustrating for all of us who have to deal with the ups and downs and all of that. But I say that because so often I think people get stuck in like how they started and they feel like they're in this container that they have to stay in forever. And so I've called myself many different things, but I've landed on accountability coach. And you ask the question, like, what does accountability mean? And I love this question because the way that I describe accountability usually surprises people. Because I think most people, and maybe not everyone, but most people that I work with and that I talk to and meet, they say, Amanda, I'm terrible at holding myself accountable. As soon as I introduce myself as the accountability coach, that's what they say. And it's because most people look at accountability and they think that it is checking things off the list. If you didn't check everything off the list at the end of the day, you didn't hold yourself accountable. But that's not what it is. By my definition, not Webster's, but by my definition, accountability is total ownership of your actions, whether or not the result you wanted happened or not. So if you did something, you take ownership of it. If you didn't do something, you take ownership of it. And what I like to add to that is that we cannot control everything. So you have to own what you can control and let go of what you can't. And I also like to say no buses allowed. We're not throwing other people under the bus, and we're not throwing ourselves under the bus when it comes to accountability.
Well, and that kind of dovetails into what I was going to ask you next, which is there's an element, I think, maybe this is cultural, I'm not sure, but I think there's an element in most people's minds of guilt. That is,
Mm.
if it were a Venn diagram, it would be a little circle inside that larger circle of accountability. How do we manage that guilt when it comes to holding ourselves accountable for the things that we did not get done?
That's a great question. I've never been asked this question. What a great one. So, guilt, my gosh, it comes up for all of us, right? And I think it comes back to there are several things that I think can impact this. Number one, we have to understand, did we put too much on the list for today? That is usually what happens. When I work with someone and they're like, I didn't get all this done. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, it's okay. First of all, we're not throwing people under the bus. It's not helpful. It's not helpful to move forward. But the first question is, did you have too much packed on your day already? And if you did, it's simply accepting that that happened, that you're like, yeah, I thought I could do all these things in a day and I actually couldn't. And you move forward with more information the next day. It's not about making yourself feel guilty because you didn't do it. Now, there are times when we get to the end of the day, the end of the week, the end of whatever we're looking at, and we look at the list and we say, you know what? I actually didn't work on the right things today, or I actually didn't work on the right things this week. I'm not saying we need to feel guilty, but we need to acknowledge it. We need to understand, okay, actually, I scrolled Instagram instead of doing the thing that I should have actually been doing to move the needle forward on my goal. And for that, I need to own it. It's not Instagram's fault. Instagram is not the problem here. Amanda is the problem because I scrolled on Instagram. So taking ownership doesn't mean feeling guilty. It just means owning the action so you can do better tomorrow.
You talked about doing the right things. I've been reading $100 Million Leads by Alex Hormozy lately, right? And he talks about high leverage activities. In other words, let's concentrate our time on the stuff that actually moves the needle. As an accountability coach, how do you teach people to keep their priorities straight in terms of not just putting the highest priority stuff at the top of the list, but getting it done consistently?
Right. For me, it all starts with the goal. And if you don't have a goal, you don't know what you're aiming for. And so that's step number one for anyone that I'm working with, is just understanding. And when it comes to goal setting, I think there's so much, like this could be the thing we talked about the whole time, is a few things for me are really important when I'm working with someone and I'm teaching about goal setting. Because this whole idea of me becoming an accountability coach came when I realized what breaks my heart. It breaks my heart when people feel like they're failing. I hate it. I want to do anything in my power to make it better. I realize that's a fixer personality situation we've got on our hands, but it's something that I recognize, like, gosh, I just want to help this person so badly. When I take it back to goal setting, there's 3 points of failure with goal setting that can throw us off and make us feel like a failure on all of these things.
Got my
So,
pen.
are you ready?
I am ready.
So, the first is being honest. So, you have to be honest about what you actually want. Now, this seems so silly that I would have to say this, but all of us fall into the trap. We will fall into the trap of what I should want, what other people told me I should want, what other people have said I want, what I think other people want me to want. Like, the list can go on, but we need to be honest about what we actually want. Because if you're not honest, I guarantee you can't make progress on the goal and know what those high priority things are, because you don't actually care about it. You're just going to spin your wheels. You're going to feel like you're failing all the time. I see it all the time. This happens more often. I would say this one, and then the second one is the next one that I see all the time. But you have to be honest. And sometimes that takes time. It takes a lot of energy. Oftentimes I'll work with people and I'm working with them for 2-3 months before they're really honest with me and honest with themselves about it. So
And
it's
that,
okay.
yeah, what are the blocks there? Is it just the voices of other people in your head?
Yeah, and I think so often, and I'll speak from my own experience as well, because I'm not pointing fingers at anyone else without pointing all 10 back at myself and saying we all do this. And it's you get so consumed with consuming information that you just fall into the trap and you really think you want it. Like, I don't know about you, but as an entrepreneur, I'll see like, oh, you should create a course. You should create a membership. You should create a blah, 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 whatever. You should use this system for podcasting and recording, like all of these things. And I'm just like, oh, and I fall into the trap of feeling like, oh yeah, I do want that. I do want that thing, and I'll really go after it, because we're most often very high achieving people that have started a business. And so when you feel like you want something, you're going to go after it and you're going to try and get there. But I've gotten to the end of that rope of like, I created the course, I created the whatever, I bought the system, and I'm still not happy. So that tells you, oh, I didn't really want that. So I think there's a lot that goes into it. When people are working with me, I think a lot of people, and I think we can all fall into this, whether it's talking to a therapist, working with a coach, a mentor, anything like that. Oftentimes we're not honest with that person right away because we are worried that they may judge what we actually want.
There's a trust factor.
Right. And so there's no, like, when anyone works with me, the biggest thing is like, there's no judgment from my end, whether you tell me your story on day 1 or day 90 or day 155. I don't care. The thing I care about is I want you to get what you want in life. And so to get there is like, how can I help you get there the quickest? Because the sooner you're honest with yourself and with me, then we can move forward.
Right.
So So that's the thing. I think we can all fall into that, of falling into the I should want this, I should want that, or whatever. And we can really believe it. Like I've really believed it before.
I do think in some cases, you've got to try something to find out whether it's
Yes,
something you want, right? And I think
absolutely.
experimentation is largely helpful, right?
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think back to like my first year in business, I was working with corporations. I had left the corporate world and that was my network. And so corporations hired me and I was making money. So on paper, that was a very successful first year in business. Like I should be very, very proud of that. But every time I said yes and I was doing the same thing I was doing in corporate, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
But I said yes in order to figure out that it was a no.
Right. Exactly. So
Yeah.
three
Yes.
points of failure with a goal. The
Mhm.
first is honesty. Number two
Mhm.
is
Capacity.
okay.
This is all about knowing what your capacity is. Because let's say a lot of people ask me about writing a book because I've now written a book. A lot of people want to write a book. The first thing I ask them is, do you have the capacity to do it? Because I know you want to already,
That
but do
hits a
you
lot of
have,
people for blogs too, right? I want a
yes,
blog, but it's hard to commit to every week or
right.
every month, right?
Right. And so capacity is important. And I define capacity as your time, your finances, your skills and or knowledge, and your energy. Because you could really want something, but if you don't have the time in this season of life, if you don't have the finances to do the thing, if you don't have the skills, if you don't have the energy to do it, now is not the right time to set that goal. Because it doesn't mean it's a bad goal. This is the thing, it's like all about giving that permission of you can set that goal later, but if you set it now, knowing that you don't have the capacity to do it, you're going to feel like a failure. Like that's what's going to happen. And again, breaks my heart every time. And so, kind of taking that honesty, you have to take the honesty about what you want. And you have to really be honest with yourself about your capacity.
There also occurs to me like you've either got to say, okay, now is not the time, or if I'm deficient in one of those four areas, I need to create the time, skills, knowledge,
Yes.
or energy, right?
Right. So often people will come to me and they'll want something, and we get to that skills and knowledge piece, and they're like, actually, I don't. And it's like, okay, well, that becomes the goal. You have
Right.
to get the skills, you have to get the knowledge, or you have to outsource the thing or whatever. But that becomes the thing that becomes the goal to get to the ultimate goal, if that makes sense. But by running it through that filter of capacity, you have such a higher chance of actually getting to the end of that goal and achieving it.
Absolutely. Do you think most people under or estimate their own capacity?
Mm. Gosh, I feel like people, when it comes to time, people really overestimate the time that they have. So I would say that very rarely are people really overestimating, like, oh, I've got the money for that. Like most
Right.
people are on the other end of that spectrum. So it really just depends on what it is. Time becomes a big one, but energy is the one that actually bubbles up later. So as I'm working with someone for a long period of time, 3, 6 months, that sort of thing. When I'm working with someone like that, I've happened to work with a lot of people that have dealt with chronic illness and chronic pain. Just a very interesting thing. I've learned that a lot of people who start their own business have that, and that's one of the reasons they started their own business is because they couldn't not deal with, but the traditional work schedule didn't work with them, so they started their own business. And when you run into energy issues like, oh, my chronic illness flared up, that becomes something that you don't think about at first, but it becomes something that you have to track because usually you can find some trends. And when you start to track that energy, you can realize, oh, about once a month or about 3 times a year, when this season comes up, this flare up happens. And you can manage around the energy more so than fighting it.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So honesty in what you want,
Mhm.
capacity across those four parameters. And then number three is
Commitment. Now, most people will say, yes, Amanda, I'm committed, which is great. I want everyone to say that. Like, yes, I'm committed to this. And then I ask the question, what effort is going to be required to achieve this goal? And we would list it out. So let's say some people will come to me and say, Amanda, I really want to pay off debt, which is a great goal. I love helping people go through that because it's so fun to celebrate that as they really pay off that debt or pay off their mortgage or whatever. It's such a fun thing to celebrate. And I'll ask, are you willing? Are you willing to put in this effort? Are you willing to say no when you really want to go to dinner with your friends 3 times instead of just 2 in the month or whatever? And we go through those specifics of the effort it's going to take. Because most of us will say when we're setting the goal, yeah, I am so committed. But we have to think about the hard times when the effort is going to suck. It is going to be hard. But if you can anticipate that effort at the beginning and then really be honest with yourself, again, it's all about this honesty. And if the answer is no, Amanda, I am not willing to do that. That is something to hugely celebrate. That is not anything to feel guilty about. It is something to hugely celebrate because you can set the goal that you're actually able to achieve if you're honest about the effort you're willing to put in.
Exactly. I feel like I remember when I was a kid, I was probably about 8 or 9, and I decided the Olympics were on. And of course, I decided in that moment that I was going to be an Olympian.
I love it.
And that as dawn slowly broke over Polyland and I figured out what it would take to be an Olympian, I went, nah, that's not for me.
But thankfully you were honest with yourself. So you didn't keep saying like, yeah, you're telling all these people you're going to be an Olympian when you're not willing to do the work. And I say it not willing, and that sometimes strikes a chord with people like, Amanda, I am willing to do this. But the reality is we have to be honest about that. Like if you're not willing to swim every day to be like Michael Phelps, like, I'm sorry, go look at his training routine. It's unbelievable when he talks about how many years and how many hours that he put in. And I'm not willing to do that for sure.
Sure. Yeah, there's a fantastic book by the late Trevor Moawad called "It Takes What It Takes," and that grows out of something that the great football coach Nick Saban said. He talks about the illusion of choice, and what he means by that is if you're going to, in your lexicon, commit to something, then you commit to all the things necessary to achieve that goal. Right? It takes what it takes. So when you commit to that goal, you automatically sacrifice those things that don't serve that goal.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Yeah, that's so great. Yeah. I love it. I'm going to have to look up those quotes and read that book.
I want to shift gears a little bit here because one of the recent podcast episodes that you did on the Unapologetic Entrepreneur deals with loneliness. And I think I mentioned this before. For voice actors. It's a big, big topic. It's one reason that I believe so much in community. This old joke about us voice actors being stuck in our tiny little padded cells all day, talking to ourselves. It's not only funny and glib, but it's also kind of true because I can't tell you how many voice actors I meet. And I suspect this is true for other creative entrepreneurs, that we are in our insular little shells working from home oftentimes. And we come to believe that our obstacles and our challenges and our problems are our own. Is that something, because you coach people from all walks of life and all kinds of entrepreneurships, is that something that you see? And what's the effect of that on the individual entrepreneur?
Yes, you're totally right in this. And it's one of those things I think we could talk about all day long. And I love that you're bringing this up. And your audience is so unique in that you are in a padded room, like literally in there and sounding awesome, doing all this amazing stuff.
Right. It even has phone.
It's real. And I love that you're bringing this up because I think a lot of people struggle with admitting that it feels lonely when you're in that space. So there's that one camp that has trouble admitting it. The other is you get into the point and you just feel so isolated that you don't even reach out. You're not even talking to people. You're really, and often like those are super successful people. You're busy, you're making money, you're doing all the stuff, and you realize I haven't talked to another human being other than email in weeks. First and foremost, I would say for a lot of us entrepreneurs, specifically people with an online business, it feels like that so much. And the cool part about entrepreneurship is you can create whatever you want. You have all this freedom. You get to choose to work at home. And there's a lot of people who work at home now after COVID, but you get to work from home, which was a dream that I had in corporate. I don't know what your background is, but gosh, I mean, I begged to have a remote job and I was told no so many times. I love that this is my reality now, but the amount of days that I don't talk to another person, like it's part of why I started a podcast because I was like, I want to talk to other people.
Sure.
And you have to find those outlets. So, I joke and say that about the podcast, but it brings me to people like you. Like I really get to connect with people in a, I know we're on a screen, but you get to have that connection with another human being. You're looking at another person and we get to form a connection that I hope we do get to meet in person one day. I mean, you just never
Sure.
know.
I also, to your point earlier, you talked about leaving that corporate job and that yearning for the work from home lifestyle, if you will, which is great and gives you, the ultimate sort of dominion over your time and ultimate freedom. But with that comes, how do I run my day? How do I spend my time? How do I make sure I'm not just busy, but busy in a productive way? How do I, because nobody's coming to hold your hand when you're an entrepreneur, right? How do you manage that? Okay, I need to structure my time and I need to be effective and productive without losing my mind.
Right. Gosh, I love that last part, without losing my mind. So on that, I'll tackle that first.
By the way, I admit that ship has already sailed for me, so.
Right. The first part is find some people, find your people, find someone to network with. You and I connected on a networking event. People, I think, get in their heads big time about the phrase networking events. Like people are like, this is awful. I hate networking. It's like, if you're doing this thing called running a business and you feel lonely, you got to find some people. So I'm not telling you have to do it in one way. I think there's a million ways to do everything in this world. There is not just one way, but you have to find your people or you will lose your mind because you'll feel so lonely and you'll probably overthink 90% of what you're doing in your business. Because usually when I get, like, let's say a few weeks down the road, I'm thinking about something and I'm just in my head about it. I email you and say, Paul, I just need to get this out. I can probably answer my own dang question by sharing it with you, right?
Right.
So find your people would be the first thing. That doesn't help you with structuring your day, but I think that is a very important part. And we're talking about like, what are the things that move the needle forward? What are the high value actions? In my opinion, based on 7 years of being an entrepreneur, coaching other entrepreneurs, finding your people is so valuable. And not every group is going to work out for you. So you might try 5 and 1 works. You might, connect with 13 people, but 1 really clicks with you. Like, don't give up because you're not finding the thing, but you have to find your community. You have to find the people that you need. And you referenced a podcast episode on loneliness on my podcast. Sherelle, who was my guest that day, she talked about this and I was like, this is so good. She said, know what level of connection you're looking for. Are you looking for someone to help you grow your business? And so it's pretty surface level, just like sharing contacts. Are you looking for someone to share the ups and downs with? That's a little more deep of a connection. And so you're going to approach it differently. And I thought that was really, really helpful. I'm curious what you think about that.
I think it's brilliant. And now that you've phrased it in the way that Sherelle phrased it, it occurs to me that I have several different, like I have an accountability partner that we talk every Monday. It's just a one-on-one. We've been doing it for years. And there's a level of honesty, and I don't mean this to sound weird, but intimacy, right? There's that level of trust that he and I have that I don't have in other groups. And that's fine. There's a lesser amount of trust in other groups, but I still use other groups to manage those levels of commitment, right? And levels of accountability. And so I feel like I've got a multi-tiered strategy through no grand design of my own, but I now recognize it because of that. So thank you.
Right. I thought the same thing. When she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so right. Because we might need one type of connection in a season. of our life, and we need a different level of connection in a different season of our life. And so knowing what you need, but prioritizing that. And I think that that is something that isn't talked about a lot. And for me personally, I'll just talk about myself. That is not something that I thought was a high lever action. Connecting with other people, finding my people, the group, like prioritizing going to the creator network, like these types of things were not the things I did at the beginning of my business. I was so focused on revenue,
Right.
so focused on that I didn't prioritize it. And in my opinion, it's part of the system now. It's like, where am I going a few times a month to connect with new people, to keep engaging? Because I mean, look at this. This is another example. Like you and I connecting, like we're learning so much. We're having such a great conversation. We'll stay connected. We'll support each other's business in how we can. But more importantly, we've connected and don't feel so dang alone.
What do you say to folks who see themselves as introverts
Mm-hmm.
and have a physical, maybe breakout in hives reaction to that term networking? It's harder for some people, objectively.
Yeah.
I am an extrovert. It's always come easy to me. But I know there are folks that when they get in a room full of people, it drains them rather than
Yeah.
gives them energy, right? How do they manage networking?
I have asked a lot of people about this because, like you, I'm an extrovert. So this is not my reality. And so I do like to acknowledge that I say these things like, just go to this thing or whatever the case is. And I know it's not that easy. However, if you know the level of connection that you want, and you know what's going to move the needle forward. So again, going back to that, like, you know your goal. And if if you're like, I want to pay off debt, I'm going to use my business to make more money so I can pay off debt. And when I pay off debt, I'm going to go on a freaking amazing trip to Italy. I'm just making all of this up. But if you
Sure.
know the why that is so important to you, you are more likely to do the things, to put in the effort that isn't super easy. I recognize going to networking type events is not easy for everyone. So I'm not saying you have to do it all the time, especially if it drains your energy. So not once a week, I'm talking once a month to do something. And luckily now, there's a lot of things out there for introverts. Like you can actually find networking events for introverts, which I think is pretty dang cool. But even if you don't see that, if you know, okay, I am choosing to go to this one thing this month, and you're like, I'm here. I'm going to say yes to this. I'm going to sign up or whatever you do, and you're going to commit to it. Chances are that day you're going to really try and find an excuse not to go. So find an extroverted friend to go with you who is like, yes, I'm looking forward to that thing on Tuesday. And they will do the work for you. I
And
was this
and there's that
person.
accountability again,
Yes.
right?
Like I was this person for one of my friends and had no idea for years. And she was like, Amanda, do you recognize that I invite you to these things? And I was like, yeah, I love it. Thank you so much. It's so great. I get to meet all these new people. And she's like, Amanda, I did it because I was scared to go to those things by myself. And I was like, that's a genius move.
Before we wrap up, I want to talk about the book, which is very thoughtfully staged right behind you. It's called Why Not? The Accidental Entrepreneur's Guide to Success. Why accidental?
Yeah, that was really interesting. So I don't know how many people listening have written a book, but it was a very interesting process. The title of the book changed several times. And writing it changed a lot about my business. I learned a lot about myself, all of this. And what I realized was that the people that I tend to work really well with when it comes to entrepreneurs is not necessarily the person who's like, I've got this tech idea, I'm going to go get the funding and all of this. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I think it's wonderful. We need all these kinds. I typically draw in people who feel like they stumbled into entrepreneurship. They have a passion of some sort, voiceovers, making jewelry, artist, whatever it is. And they take that passion and somehow stumbled into creating a business and are like, oh, shoot, I didn't go to business school.
Right.
Now what? And that's where I tend to come in and support that person because all of a sudden the confidence feels like it plummets. And that's when you need someone in your corner. And so why not you became the title because I found myself saying it every day. Why not you, Paul? Why not you? It's like I just kept saying, if someone else can do this, why can't you? Yes, you can. You can do this. You don't need to go to business school. Not that there's anything wrong with business school.
Sure.
But all of these things. And so that's how I ended up with that. But it's that idea of stumbling into entrepreneurship, like it feels like it was an accident.
My God, I've learned a ton today. Thank you so much. Amanda, tell us where we can find the book and where we can find you.
Wonderful. I have really enjoyed this conversation too, Paul. You can find anything about me at my website, which is amandamckinney.com. You can find information about the book there and all the other things that I do. So that's the easiest place to find information.
And I assume the book is on sale, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you get your normal books.
Absolutely.
Amanda McKinney, thank you so much. Again, the book is called Why Not? The Accidental Entrepreneur's Guide to Success. And you can find that at your local bookstore, at Amazon, and most of all at amandamckinney.com. Amanda, thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.